All right. Welcome to another episode of the Empowered by Victors podcast. Again, this is Stacy. Today I have Gina with Mamaste Fit, founder, and just absolute wealth of knowledge in regards to exercise in general, but specifically that motherhood transition time period of like prenatal, postpartum, and all things motherhood and women and movement and birth and everything in between. I've been following along with you for a very long time. So I'm excited to actually get to sit down and like chat with you a little bit more. Um, so welcome first and foremost, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. And Gina is expecting her second. Is that right?
Fourth.
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 Fourth. I was gonna say, I feel like on your social media platform, sometimes I'm like, is she still pregnant, or is this just like she's just reusing content from before?
It's a little bit of both.
Like film it while you have it and then hold on to it for a little while. So fourth pregnancy, fourth delivery, all
Mhm.
the things. How many children do you are? What are the ages and genders of your children now?
So my oldest is 7. She is a girl. And then my
Yeah.
next is a boy. He is 4. And then my youngest right now is about like 22 months. So she'll be 2 in October. So this will be our first 2 under 2 experience because this baby is due any day now.
Yes, yes, that's a fun little stage of life, that's for sure. But having older ones, I feel like makes it a little bit easier.
They start
Yeah.
taking care of themselves. They're pretty much raising themselves at a certain point.
Yeah, right. My youngest is 7, so I think I remember that, like, you and I having children right around the same time. So my youngest though, my oldest is just turned 16 and is now driving, so it's a whole nother ball game.
Oh man.
Yes. Well, I want to chat about Mama Stay Fit. I want to chat about, Gina has a book coming out here in September. Is that right?
September 10th, it's called Training for Two. It's all about how you can use prenatal fitness to support a strong pregnancy, pain-free, and then also prepare for birth. And there's even a chapter in there on like the early postpartum as well. And so it's essentially just a collection of the knowledge and study that I've gained over the past 7+ years of training this population exclusively. And yeah, so it's just all consolidated, or as much as I could, into a book. So yeah, it comes out in September. There are some pre-order incentives as well, so if folks do grab it before it comes out, you get the missing chapter because I wrote way too much, and they told me I had a word count. So you will get the missing chapter, which is all about labor as well, which I think is pretty cool.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, what brought you into this line of work, Gina? Like, your background, your education, all that stuff. Like, what led you to start Mama Stay Fit?
So I was in the army previously, so I was active duty army here in North Carolina, and towards the end of my pregnancy, or about the middle to end of my pregnancy, my husband and I decided that it was not going to work for our family for both of us to still be active duty. There's just like a lot of demands involved with being a service member that it would have been too much for our family to have both of us having those same type of demands. Like for example, my husband has deployed about 6 times since our children have been born, and so we just didn't want to have it be both of us deploying all the time. So I transitioned off of active duty and became a stay-at-home mom and was trying to kind of figure out like what I wanted to do when I grew up. I wanted something to be like a creative outlet for myself where I could focus some energy on that was more than just my child. And so when my daughter was like maybe a month or two old, I decided that I wanted to start Mamaste Fit and I wanted to train like other women that were in the same phase of life during their pregnancies and their postpartums because at the time I didn't feel like there was that much out there for pregnancy. Like now that there's definitely a lot more like options for folks, but like at the time I think I found like one program that offered any sort of prenatal anything, and they were either like way too easy, like it wasn't made for somebody who was like athletic, or it was just like it just didn't make any sense. And like looking back on some of the programming, like I understand why they didn't make any sense. Um, and so I was like, all right, well, I want to create something that provides this resource to like folks who are more athletic, who like lifting weights, who want to work out, and to support them to feel strong throughout their pregnancy, because there's so much fear mongering and contradictory information out there on like what is safe to do, what is not safe to do. Like this is harmful for your baby. And I didn't know at the time on how to decipher it all. Like, can I exercise on my back? Is like that okay? Like, can I do a sit up? Like, should I run? Like, and so there was just so many questions that I had, and there was no place for me to go that had like clear guidance that that made me feel confident to moving. And so during my pregnancy, I just kind of did what felt good for me, like my first pregnancy before I started Mamaste Fit. And then I made it into the postpartum, and I was like, what do I do here? Like, how do I get back to where I was? Like, I think I should like take my time and like be patient with this process. And like fortunately I was, and so I like really was able to establish a strong foundation and like get back to like lifting and stuff. I tried some postpartum programs. Some of them were like too easy and like they weren't progressing like fast enough for me. Other ones were like way too challenging too soon. And so I was just kind of creating my own thing that was kind of like a happy medium. Um, After like I started Mama Stay Fit, I actually started in somebody else's gym, and it was a personal training gym. And so I was able to develop my own client base. And essentially it just became a bunch of moms that started working out together with their babies. And like I was able to develop my programming and figure out like what work best for folks within this phase of life, because how I feel during my pregnancy and during my postpartum is not the same as other people. And not as in like I was better or anything, but we all have different experiences. Different movements feel better for us than others, depending on like what's going on during our pregnancy, how did our birth go, how's postpartum going. And so training the in-person client was like super beneficial because I was able to kind of figure out what movements made sense, which ones didn't work for the majority of folks, or actually this other movement that I didn't even think of works really well for a lot of people, even though it doesn't feel great for me in my own body. And so I was able to start really developing my programming and the exercise structures and things because of this group of moms who let me use them as guinea pigs, essentially. Um, After about a year of kind of just exclusively doing the fitness training, one of my prenatal clients asked me to be her birth doula. And so I had developed enough of a clientele base at this point that I was actually able to hire on coaches to help me out with my classes. And I was able to become a birth doula. And so I started supporting births at this point, and then it became kind of like full spectrum support. So I was providing the prenatal fitness to help folks move confidently throughout their pregnancy. I was supporting birth, and then I was helping them recover postpartum. So it was kind of like conception to baby is what I was able to provide. And what was really cool about like the birth experience work is I was able to observe how people were moving during their labors. What kind of issues are we kind of encountering during labor that could be resolved with movement? Because it's a team effort when it comes to supporting a birth. It's not just what medical intervention can we give you, which are great to have, but like also what like movement interventions can we do? Like what other tools do we have to kind of help somebody move through this? And as a doula, kind of the main role like I find that doulas can have is we can become the movement experts because we're in the room the whole time with somebody as they labor. We can monitor those subtle cues that are kind of shifting that maybe the medical team doesn't have an opportunity to keep an eye out for because they can't be in the room the whole time. And so I really began to focus my study on like pelvic mechanics, on how movement impacts like creation of space within the pelvis, what type of movements help to contribute towards that. I Throughout this whole time, I went back to school and got my master's in exercise science because I was like, I want the academic study as well, and really focusing like my thesis and study on prenatal fitness. And after about like 18 months to 2 years of all of this, I opened my own brick and mortar space. And now we have our own little gym here in Aberdeen, North Carolina, where we have prenatal, postpartum fitness training. We also have like a chiropractor, massage therapist, and pelvic floor PT kind of all underneath one roof. And we're just kind of this like little wellness collective where families can come and feel supported and move throughout their pregnancy. And then we also have our fairly large online platform where we provide tons of free content and education, all about everything from fitness to birth to movement. My sister, I dragged her in kicking and screaming. She's a labor and delivery nurse and student midwife, and so she provides all the medical aspect of stuff because it is important to know what all that stuff is too. Like majority of us are going to give birth in a hospital, and so it's beneficial to understand what these interventions are and how we can use them as tools, because there's no morality to Pitocin or an epidural. Like, whether or not you want to use them is up to you, but you should understand what those tools are and how they can be beneficial for you. And so she kind of brings that into the equation. So we kind of have this like happy medium between the two of us, where it's not all or nothing. Here's some holistic stuff, more movement based stuff that you can do, and then here's like the medical perspective as well, and kind of choose what works best for you and for your family. That was something that was really important to me as we started developing like our childbirth education content to help folks during birth. Was my first birth was like pretty traumatic, and I really like believe a lot of that was because I was scared shitless going into my birth based on courses that I was taking prior to birth. Like, it was very like Pitocin is bad. If you get an epidural, you're hurting your baby. And so when I needed these things during my labor, I felt very guilty and I felt like I did something wrong. And it created a lot of an anxiety for me as I was navigating my birth. The medical team for me at my first birth was also not great, but I didn't know how to have a conversation with them and how to navigate the space very well. And the course that I took did not help me do that. And so it became really important for me when we were developing our own childbirth education course and educating folks on what to expect during their labors is to try to be as unbiased as possible. Because, I mean, we can't totally get rid of our bias. We all have biases, but acknowledging those biases is really important. And understanding that not everybody wants the same experience as you, and that's okay. And like, it doesn't, just because somebody doesn't want to give birth at home doesn't mean they're doing something wrong. Like, that's their personal choice, and they should feel empowered to make the decisions that work best for them during their pregnancy, during their birth, and their postpartum. And so that's kind of what we provide at Mamaste Fit and how we came to be. And along the way, we've had many more children that have helped kind of mold and change things and how we do things based on like things that I've been learning and kind of moving through my own pregnancies. But the big things for us is we're probably one of the only ones that really offer both the fitness and the birth aspect of it. Usually it's like one or the other. I think there's a few other like folks that kind of are in both worlds, but I think we're probably the predominant ones out there. And then we also have both the medical aspect with my sister as a nurse and student midwife, and then me as like the fitness aspect kind of coming together, or as the doula also coming together. Usually it's kind of like one or the other. So we kind of have this full spectrum support that we can offer that kind of spans a few different fields to really provide a lot of support, because it is important to know how to move your body to prepare for birth. It's not all or none. So that was a lot,
No, no,
but
no, no, I love it. Absolutely. I mean, it's like you took, a lot of the same things that, the reason I started was that all of this was, my birth of my third son and the way that I trained differently and the way that I realized like the lack of research and the lack of knowledge in regards to exercise for prenatal. And then postpartum was like a whole nother ball game of like, oh gosh, like we're doing nothing that right anymore. And, same like 7 years ago this stuff wasn't really talked about. It wasn't really, discussed. The fragility piece of pregnancy was still very, and I think it still is to a certain extent, fairly prominent. And then, just like go back to your normally scheduled programming postpartum, like just, get back on
just
the
bounce
horse and
back.
keep doing what you're,
Just
yeah, just do what you normally would do. Which we both know just like doesn't feel the same, especially if you are like more athletic and then you get told at 6 weeks, like, okay, just go do what you were doing. Like that just feels defeating, to be honest with you. Um, so yeah, I mean, the way that you've like found your niche and like really lean into that, like I just absolutely love it. And you are like an absolute wealth of knowledge in that space. I know within the Victress model, we have like a prenatal course, or not course, fitness program that we've written for members internally of from like weeks 4 through 42 of pregnancy, based on, where my co-programmer, Amber Toomey, she worked for Girls Gone Strong for a long time since she helped with their prenatal postpartum education. But I would love to get your perspective on like the programming aspect of the prenatal fitness side of things. Maybe like the myths involved of like, so many people are like, you know, for example, when I went to my midwife, she was like, well, just keep doing what you were doing. Well, at the time I was doing CrossFit and I didn't really feel like that was the most appropriate thing to continue on. There are aspects of it, yes, that I wanted to like maintain and I knew I could maintain, but there was also like I wanted some intention to it. I wanted to like feel like I was training for something and feel like I was training in a way that I could, contribute to my labor and delivery process, right? So how where have you journeyed to like the programming philosophy that you guys have developed?
So there are like kind of two ends of that spectrum of like just do what you're doing before, just maybe a little bit less than like that, and that applies for pregnancy and postpartum. Like just listen to your body. And then the
Right.
other end is like don't start anything that you haven't done pre-pregnancy. But for a lot of people, like and at least in our country, most of us are sedentary. Like we're not doing a whole ton, and so the benefits of exercising throughout pregnancy, like are just so enormous that it's not fair to tell somebody like they can't start something during pregnancy. And so we kind of got those two ends of the spectrum where it's like, just do what you did before, don't do anything new though. And I think both of those are not very helpful because they don't really give anybody any sort of guidance on like, well, what can I actually do? So with our programming, big things that we focus on is strength endurance. And so we have higher volume with higher reps at a lighter weight. And so during the first and second trimester, we're kind of moving at like 70 to 80% effort levels. And this is not like 70, 80% of your one rep max pre-pregnancy. This is 70, 80% of your effort level of that day. Because every day kind of fluctuates throughout pregnancy too. Even in my own pregnancy in the third trimester, some days I have tons of energy and I can do a lot more. Some days I'm like, I kind of want to just take a nap. But I know moving is important. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to do what my today's 70% is, which is less than yesterday's. And that's okay. And so usually what I recommend with the 70 to 80% is if you're lifting weights, you should be able to do all your reps really well. And you should feel like you have like 2 or 3 more left in the tank at the end of the round. So you're like, I could do more, but if I did too many more, I would not feel. So you're still getting challenged, but you're not going to bail the bar. Like, we're not compromising our form. Like, we're not like, and the things that come with compromising form is also pressure mismanagement, which is going to contribute towards more of those pelvic floor and core issues postpartum. And so that's a big reason why being able to like move weight at a level that you can maintain really good form is super important because the first thing that's probably going to deteriorate is our pressure management and how we're breathing to maintain the pressure within that abdominal cavity against the pelvic floor. So you should be able to do all your reps, maybe a few more before your form is like, and that's how we know we're doing pretty good. We're not like doing too much, but we're also not, going way too easy either. If we're doing more cardio efforts or more of like circuit training or HIIT type training or the CrossFit stuff, you should be able to speak like a short sentence before you're like, I'm a little winded. Like, okay, maybe I should slow down just a little bit here. When we make it into the third trimester, this is going to decrease too because we're just more fatigued in the third trimester. And so this is probably going to be anywhere from like 50 to 60% effort levels starting at this point. And we're also starting to think about tapering when it comes to birth as well. So kind of like the final month, like the second half of your third trimester, we're starting to decrease volume. We're really decreasing effort levels because we're thinking about like if birth was this like sporting event that we were training for, not that birth is a competition by any means, but I don't want to go to my like big event that I've been training 9 months for sore or super fatigued because my workouts were too hard. Like I want to go like maintaining my fitness level, but not like overly fatigued. And so if anybody is familiar like with athletics, like there's usually some sort of taper that happens in preparation for a competition. Um, and so at this, usually starting around 36 weeks, we start decreasing volume within the programming. We start decreasing overall workout time. And we start decreasing weights. We start transitioning more to like free weights, like body weight movements, more mobility stuff, because we still want to maintain the fitness level, but we don't want to be sore when labor comes because there's enough going on during that experience that we don't need to add to by making it hard for you to sit down on the toilet because your legs are sore from your workout. With
Yeah.
our programming, our rep scheme is typically like 8 to 10, 6 to 10 reps for like the lift. So definitely on the higher side of volume, but the weights are definitely much lighter. And so that's kind of how we counter like not being able to lift super heavy during your pregnancy while still giving you a challenge is we increase the rep scheme. And we pair everything with stabilization exercises. And so we have our squat, for example, it's like 10 reps of the back squat during each trimester. There's some different modifications depending on comfort levels. During the third trimester, the big one is like we just squat down to a box, or we transition to using like dumbbells instead of the barbell. But we'll pair that with some sort of single leg stability movement to help improve strength, endurance, and stabilization, because during pregnancy, stabilization really changes. There's a lot of different demands that are happening. Our mass has increased, like just from baby and all this extra fluid, like how our core is able to stabilize changes, our center of gravity shifts. So continuing to incorporate a lot of these stabilization exercises is really important, in addition to incorporating movements that are targeting opening different parts of the pelvis, releasing tension within the pelvic floor, and then also pelvic stability exercises. So we kind of like weave everything together. So we'll get folks that are like, what core exercises should I do? I'm like, well, the squat is a core exercise. Anything where you maintain your body position is a core exercise, but it's hard to recognize that if you've been told your whole life that crunches and bicycles and sit-ups are core exercises. So there's a little bit of like re-education that happens with the programming as well, because we all have different backgrounds when it comes to fitness and what our education levels are and how formal those educations can be. And so we might not understand that, well, we can do more than just sit-ups to train our core. I could do a farmer's carry. Like we have one lady that messages and she'll be like, well, what can I do instead? I'm like, just carry some weight. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, that's a core exercise. Just do it on one side.
Give away.
Yeah. And then with the birth preparation exercises, it's more than just deep squats and stretching and butterfly poses. We have to think about what kind of muscles are pulling the pelvis into different positions, because our muscles only have the ability to pull. They can't push. So when I am trying to change bone position, it's a muscle that's pulling on that bone to change its position. And this is going to apply to the pelvis as well. And so it's not just stretching. We also need to think about the strengthening aspect as well. So the top of the pelvis, the glutes are really going to be prime movers there to help create more space in the top of the pelvis from side to side. So this is where a lot of that like squat, hip thrust type movements are going to be super beneficial, in addition to exercises that strengthen the outer glute musculature. So like lateral band walks, abduction, things like that. When we make it to the mid pelvis, this is where there's more asymmetrical movement happening. And some folks get a little nervous when it comes to single leg movements or asymmetrical movements because of pelvic pain, or they've been told that they shouldn't be doing that because so many people have pelvic pain during pregnancy. Pain is not a requirement of pregnancy by any means. This was something that was told to me during my first pregnancy when I had SI joint pain was, well, when you give birth, it'll just go away. And then people give birth and they still have pelvic pain. They're like, what do you mean? Because it wasn't your baby that was causing your pelvic pain. It was a biomechanical pattern that you had pre-pregnancy that got worse during pregnancy because there's a lot more movement happening within our joints. There's a different load that's happening. Your stabilization is changing. Your posture is changing. And so there's a lot that we can actually do during pregnancy to be pain-free. And we've helped a lot of folks find relief during pregnancy and recognize that pain is not a requirement by any means. And so with the mid pelvis, this is where we're going to have all of those asymmetrical type movements. So lunges, step ups, any sort of single leg exercise or stance or tiger stance exercise is going to be really beneficial here. And we're focusing a lot on internal to external hip rotation. So closed to open hip positions, things like that. And there are ways that we can do it to accommodate if somebody does have pelvic pain as well. So it doesn't have to be a single leg lunge. It can be a split stance or it can be supported, but we still want to find that type of movement there. But these are also strength exercises. So folks might not think like birth prep lunges, like they might think birth prep squats and butterfly pose. When it comes to the bottom of the pelvis, the muscles that are going to help create more space down there are going to be your hamstrings and your adductors, so your inner thighs and the muscles on the back of your legs. So strengthening those with like hinge type movement patterns, like adduction, so squeezing the legs together, are going to be really helpful to creating space in the bottom of the pelvis. And so we're incorporating movements like deadlifts, Copenhagen planks, adductor side planks, things like that to help prepare for pushing. And then you got all the upper body exercises because weight does shift more forward. And so we do want to strengthen on the back side of the body so we can counter that shift forward. So there's definitely a lot that goes into our prenatal programming. And I don't want folks to feel like they have to reinvent the wheel because there are so many really great programs out there. Like obviously I'm biased towards my own, but like there's different programs out there based on how you like to exercise as well. And so for us, like we offer our online program, which is like an app-based program. It's like lists of exercises, more traditional style of workout delivery. But we also have full-length workout videos as well that folks can follow if they prefer that. And then if they have a workout program that they already really like to do, because really just moving your body during pregnancy is beneficial. Like it's okay if it's not like the perfect movements. You can also just add on our birth prep program. Like if you're like, I'm already like in a CrossFit gym, I really like the programming, I like the community, I don't want to leave it. Don't blame you. You can always just join our birth prep program if you want just the specific movements to help create space within each of the pelvic levels, because some programs may be neglecting certain types of movement patterns, such as the lateral, like moving in that frontal plane or in the transverse plane, because CrossFit is very sagittal plane. Most workout programs are very like front to back, just because those are the common movements like squats and deadlifts. They're front to backs, cleans and snatches and all that stuff.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, that's kind of our programming philosophy. And then there's lots of room to adjust based on how you feel each day. And I think that's something that is hard for somebody who comes from an athletic background to like let go of the ego and to recognize that not every day needs to be max effort. Like some days are just not going to look like that. If anything, you can use pregnancy as an excuse to like chill out. You can use postpartum as an excuse to kind of chill out a little bit and just really kind of honor what your body's telling you. And I find that really translates very well to labor as well, because we don't always know how labor is going to go. Like, and not to be like, you should never plan for birth, because you should absolutely have like preferences for what you want during your labor. But like we don't know how long contractions are going to be or how hard they're going to feel or if your water's going to break first or whatever. And so there's a little bit of surrendering that needs to happen during birth. And you can start that during pregnancy by kind of surrendering to how am I feeling today? I'm not going to be able to lift as much weight as maybe I was planning. I'm not going to work out for as much as I was hoping for, but I'm still here. I'm still doing it. And I'm just experiencing this. And so I find that mental aspect of prenatal fitness really translates very, very well to labor. So it's kind of our stuff, the overview.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love that everything you articulated there. Like you know, within the walls of Victor's locations, like we're taking very similar philosophies, very similar methodologies, and everything that you're saying. It's just you know, a space where there's some coaches on them, but they're doing the prenatal programming alongside. Like what's unique about you guys is that you're doing it. That's you know all the same demographic as
Hmm.
like prenatal, postpartum, or you know these women going through that process together. We may have one or two prenatals in the gym at one time, but we also have menopause going on, and we have you know group class, and we have like all these different things of like stage of life specific within the space. But it's the prenatal aspect and the prenatal fitness aspect is something obviously like very near and dear to my heart, because it's just a such a transformative and opportunity. I think it's just such an opportunity as a woman to like really, like you said, surrender to what's going on with you, educate yourself, empower yourself, and you know the birth process, whatever it is. You know, obviously, I'm also a birth doula, so I've seen a lot of different outcomes in those birth settings. But the moms that do move with intention and move their bodies consistently throughout their pregnancy tend to have closer to the outcomes maybe that they wanted, but also just like tend to have a lot more sense of self and sense of accomplishment no matter kind of what happened, is because I think the programming side of it and like the ability to work out throughout their pregnancy has put them in a headspace that going, you know, regardless of maybe the process of birth, not saying that obviously a lot of things can happen, but they feel like, okay, like I still contributed, I still like had a say, I still had a space within that experience. Within the postpartum space, I know we got about 10 minutes here, but within the postpartum space, I think that that's just something very unique for a lot of fitness professionals to navigate. I think it can be a little overwhelming for, you know, somebody that's a personal trainer at a gym that hasn't really worked with a, you know, prenatal is a whole nother ballgame. But then in postpartum, I think if anything is even more important to really know like how to support a woman in that postpartum time period. You know, just coming back into a boot camp or whatever it may be at 6 weeks postpartum probably isn't the most appropriate thing for most women. Not saying that they can't, doesn't necessarily mean they should. So what are the, key points that you're really taking, or maybe like a quick little timeline on what you're taking with your clients in that postpartum
So I think
journey?
one of the things that makes it the most challenging is now we have another person. We have a baby that also has a say in how things go, which can make it really challenging. For me, postpartum, it was really hard for me to think about putting my baby into like a daycare so that I can go work out, but it's also really hard to work out with them, like have them be there. And so something that we do in our gym is like we allow people to bring their kids and their babies and stuff to the gym. Like we baby proof as much as we can. That's not something that's realistic for all gyms though. Like, and I acknowledge that. Like we have a very specific space that works. It would not work in every gym or most gyms. And so that's kind of how we manage the baby aspect of like, okay, you don't have to put your baby in a daycare. They can be right next to you the whole time, but you still have to take care of them. And so because the baby is right there the whole time and there's not this separate person that takes care of them, sometimes the coach will like grab the kid and kind of rock them and stuff, is giving people the opportunity, like the permission to stop, to take care of their baby and to understand that workouts are not going to look the same as pre-pregnancy or even during pregnancy if this is your first child. And that was something that I struggled with a lot postpartum, was that my workouts were not going to look the same. Like I was not going to do an hour and a half long, like crush my body workout because I couldn't, like I could not. And like one day I'll probably get back there if I want to, maybe not. I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that again. Um, but my workouts are gonna look different, and that's okay. And I think a lot of like motherhood and especially that early part is just the permission to not, or to do something that feels good for you, because again it continues into motherhood. Like you got all this unsolicited advice during pregnancy where it's contradictory, you don't really know what you're supposed to listen to, like everything is, oh, ask your doctor, get your permission from your doctor. Like, and I'm like, my doctor doesn't know if I could squat or not. Like, and then it continues into postpartum where people have all sorts of opinions and they're trying to save your baby from you. Like, your baby needs to be here. They need to wear socks. They need to eat this. Like, this is the best diaper, blah, blah, blah. And so now you're kind of dealing with all of this information and you're trying to find your confidence in what works best for you. And you're like, well, I feel like this specific thing is best for me, but everyone else is saying that this is the best and I don't really know what to do. And so it can be really hard to feel confident. And I'm like, well, workouts were the one thing that I was good at before. Let me just do that. And then you're like, well, I can't because this baby that I love with all my heart wants me to hold them the whole time. So workouts will just look, I know, it's like, can you just not? Like, just take a nap. Like, you do it the rest of the day. Um, and so I
Yep.
think a lot of it is just giving permission. And that's something that we do a lot in our space in the gym is, hey, it's okay if you need to stop. Like, the workout will still be here. Like, you don't have to crush yourself today. And if anything, it's better that you're kind of taking your time because it's really allowing you to get in tune with your body, to reconnect with your core. So that's kind of the big stuff that we focus on in the early part is reconnecting mind and body, because our bodies are different after we give birth. There's nothing wrong with that, but it is a little bit different. Things are going to feel weird. Like movement patterns that used to be super familiar are not going to feel the same. Like birth is planned trauma. Like there's a lot that happened to our bodies, and it's really important for our long-term health to really honor that healing process and acknowledging that it's a patient process. It's not 6 weeks and we're good to go. Like it takes at least 8 to 12 weeks for just our tissues to heal after birth. And then it's going to probably be closer to a year, 18 months before you're like really feeling like, I feel good again. Like I feel like myself again. But that's a really long time. And it's hard to do that when you've been told 6 weeks all clear. Just go back to what you're doing before. Just do a little bit less. Or you have all of this like media that's like before and after pictures. She did my 4 week program and look how skinny she is now. She's so much happier. And like, and then you get folks that are like, oh, I don't believe in before and after photos, but here's my before and stronger photo. I'm like, it's the same fucking thing. I'm like, you're still feeding into that marketing tactic, but you're pretending that you're not, and it's confusing people. Um, so this is a very passionate thing of mine, obviously.
No, it's
And so
good.
it is really important in the postpartum to take your time to really focus first on that core stabilization. So how can I connect my core to my arms and legs doing things and it maintaining its position? How can I reconnect to my breathing? And there's a huge mental aspect to that because it's like a lot of thinking. And so when folks start our programming, I'm like, listen, It's not going to be a boot camp class. You're not going to be making sweat angels on the floor. I want some expectation management right now, because we have some folks like quit the gym because they're like, this wasn't hard enough for me. I'm like, you don't need hard right now, but you can go wherever you want.
Mm.
This is not going to be the space for you. Um, like I'm like, the program is not going to make you sweat the first week. Maybe week 10, you'll be a little bit more sweaty. Like you'll probably start getting sore like week 3 or 4. But this week, you're going to be mentally fatigued and you're going to be tired because you're going to have to think, okay, when I breathe, this part of my pelvic floor and my back expands. And then when I exhale, I'm lifting up and I'm pairing that with a movement pattern. So when I exhale, my arm lifts. And so there's a lot of thinking that's involved, and it's very slow and methodical, and it's mentally fatiguing because you have to get that foundation reestablished. And then the next week, you think about it a little bit less because you're like, it's becoming more like mind to body muscle memory. And then the movements start progressing as well. So we start with limited joint movement. So we're doing like kneeling squats. And then the next week, we're doing like a box squat. And then the third week, we're doing an air squat. And then we're adding in some weights at that point. So it's a very slow, methodical process that works really well for our clients. And yeah, but it's giving people permission to do not, to not do things, to understand that the baby plays a big role in how somebody can approach fitness. Like, you have those like 20-year-old influencers. We all have the same 24 hours. I'm like, I don't know where my 24 hours went because I didn't have time to do anything today. And so it's okay to not do a 90-minute workout. If we do 10 or 20 minutes of like breathing and reconnection and core work, like that's awesome. Like that's really good. We can baby wear. Like we can figure out different things that work for us and our families so that like if you do want to dedicate time to working out, like you can do that. Maybe it's, say, when my partner gets home from work, they're going to watch the baby and then I'm going to get to go and focus on my workout. But that doesn't always work too. Sometimes you're like, well, I want to spend time with my partner. Like, what else have I been doing all day? It's like, I don't know.
Right. Want some adult
It's like,
time?
what do you mean? So giving somebody permission to not, to acknowledge that this is a very patient and different process than any other time in our life. And it's okay that it's like that. It's not going to be forever, but it does take time. And the more patience that you have in this early time, the better for your long-term athletic performance, your long-term health. Like you're going to run faster and lift heavier and do so much more if we are patient during this time frame and really methodical with how we approach it. And this is why I think it's really beneficial to like joining a program, like working with coaches like who are trained in this time frame. Like, yeah, so that was kind of like a all over the place answer, but that's kind of how we approach
No, that was
postpartum fitness.
perfect.
It's a
I
lot
love
of
it.
giving permission.
No, it's yes. I love that you mentioned that about, the baby being an aspect and a hurdle. It is. It's something, we have them, they can lay in the gym with them while up until they're mobile, and then we do have a daycare service here too. So it's just like, it is a hurdle and it's hard. It's hard to like, coach a class and try to focus on making sure that everybody's safe and doing well, but also like, let mom get her workout in as much as possible. So I totally get it. And I love everything that you've said from prenatal to postpartum. Thank you so much for everything. I'm so pumped. Tell us really quick before I let you go about your book, where people can get it. Is it like for just the average mom consumer? Is it more for trainers? And we'll make sure to put information. I'll get information for you and we'll put it in show
So my
notes
book
too.
is called Training for Two. It's all about prenatal fitness and using that to support your pregnancy through your birth and then a little bit of the early postpartum. You can get it on Amazon, really anywhere where you order books. It comes out on September 10th, so it is pre-order right now. If you do pre-order it, you do get the missing chapter though that got excluded, which was all specific to labor. So like labor positions, how to create space within your pelvis, things like that for birth, which I think is really cool. It also includes like labor stalls. If you want to learn more from us, you can check us out on Instagram at Mamaste Fit. We also have a YouTube channel where we have longer form videos. We have like weekly workouts and stuff on there as well. And we do have our own podcast just called the Mamaste Fit podcast. It's very focused on like pregnancy, postpartum time frame. So if you want kind of the fitness aspect, the birth, and like the postpartum aspect, our podcast is pretty good, I think. We also share birth stories also on there. I think
Awesome.
folks really like those are probably our most popular ones
Yes.
is other folks' birth stories to help to kind of normalize all sorts of different types of experiences. Training for two is meant for the person that is pregnant. So usually somebody who is from a more athletic background. But the information within there you can use if you are not super like into the gym or in CrossFit. It's going to be beneficial for trainers. Like that information is going to be applicable to somebody who is training folks within that time frame as well. So it's kind of for everybody, but there is like more barbell and like lifting stuff within it. So if you are from a lifting background, you will love the book. And
Okay.
there's pictures and
Awesome.
QR codes
Awesome.
for videos as well so that you can see how different movements are done. So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I will absolutely be getting my hands on a few of those. I really appreciate you doing that. That's got to be a labor
It
of
was a
love
very long
on many
process.
different aspects that you're doing. I'm sure. I'm sure you're laboring love of all sorts of different ways right now. So thank you for your time. Thank you for just the things that you're doing for women in this world. I would love to have you back on and just talk about C-sections and just the birth culture of this country in general, because I think we could
Oh
go down a
yeah.
complete rabbit hole for quite a while on that. So maybe we can reschedule that for another time. But thank you for this and good luck on your fourth delivery. I'm sure it will be beautiful, but I can't wait to get
Thank you so
updates.
much.
Thank you. We'll chat soon. Thanks, girl. Bye bye.